Hey everybody, I'm Nick Blair with Bangert Inc. and with me is Lisa Hutt. And welcome back to Construction Accounting 101. We're really excited today to talk about vendors, everything that you need to know. This is a continuation of our prep for year-end audits, and we just knew that we had more to share with you. Quick disclaimer, this is not official advice. This is just educational. Please talk to your CPA before you do anything that might have an impact on your business. Lisa, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Nick. So today we're going to talk about why and how to use approved vendors. So in accounting, if you have too much control with one person, it is a big deal. You need to have a segregation of duties in certain facets of your cycles. So for example, if you have an AP manager or an AP clerk that is adding vendors into the system and then able to cut a check, they could potentially set up a fictitious vendor and cut a check even to themselves, right? You also could have a situation where you have an external request, a vendor would email you, and let's say it's for some new contractor you have, and it's a very similar name to one of your new vendors that one of your construction managers bid with. That is a very easy way for external parties to even get into your system. And without the proper controls and checks, it can be a very disastrous event.
Yeah, it
So
sounds like it could be.
yes, you could potentially pay, 50, 100,000 or more, whatever the request is, if you don't do proper checking. So we'll get into that a little bit and how to use it in the system as well, and kind of some things to watch out for just in general, accounting related beyond what Intact offers. So sound
Awesome.
good? All
Yeah,
right.
that sounds great. I have one question though. Since this
Yeah.
is Construction Accounting 101, if someone doesn't know, what is a
Yeah.
vendor, Lisa?
Yeah, sure. So a vendor is someone that you are going to be basically paying funds to, right? So it's your utility bills. It could be your contractors. It could even be somebody you're paying mileage to in your company, right? Like employees are employees for payroll, but you also might cut a check to an employee. So it's really people you're distributing money to out of your checking account, is really layman's simple terms.
Awesome.
All
Thank you.
right. Yeah.
You already
So
went through a little bit about why there's so much focus. There's a lot of potential for fraud when it comes to vendors, either from someone inside your company trying to commit fraud,
mhm.
someone outside of your company trying to commit fraud. And so having these controls in place really protects the company as a whole from these fictitious claims, whether they come from an internal source or an external source. And that's why when we were talking about them in the Construction Accounting 101 about the year end in your audits, you kept saying that auditors want to see vendor approvals happening.
That's right. So how many customers did we get that called us? They called us up and they said, "Hey, is there something that you guys can help with that shows that we've approved the vendor in some way?" I'm like, "There's an actual approved vendors thing that Intact has come out with, right? A feature." So I had probably six of them this year that had that as an audit finding, which you don't want those, by the way. Those are bad findings.
We both used to do audit findings, and we
Yeah.
know we know from the auditor side that you did not want to have those.
Yeah, you don't want to have those. So it's not to go to say that you don't trust your AP manager, AP clerk, if you have an internal accounting control you're putting in place. It's for everyone's peace of mind. So there's many more things we're going to talk about with that too, for external things you should check for. So we'll get into that some. Okay.
Excellent.
So, you have any more questions you have on the general? That makes sense so far, I believe.
No,
So
I
we'll get
think
into the how to do this and where you're going to go in Intact. So I'm going to share my screen here. So a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to go into the accounts payable configuration, and we're going to turn on the approve vendors functionality down here at the bottom-ish area. Another tip, I do this a lot, is use Control F and you can find where those are. So here's enable vendor approval right here that I have turned on. Okay. So if you have already set up vendors in your system, it's not a problem. It's going to turn all of those to an approved state. So those will be converted automatically. Okay. So once you check mark that and hit save, it will do that for you. Email notifications, you'll want to probably turn that on so that you'll get notified when a vendor is set up and it needs to be approved, or it's been declined and it needs to be resubmitted. Okay. So, and we'll show that a little bit as well. You can hit these little question marks too to see what things do. Okay. So it explains that background process that runs to approve all your vendors that are already there. Okay. So once you hit these two buttons, you hit save, that's set up. All right. Now in security, you're going to want to go to the roles in admin. Okay. So a typical example would be your AP manager or clerk is putting in a vendor, right? But the controller or CFO is going to approve the vendor. Okay. So in their role, the controller or CFO's role, you're going to want to make sure that they have the approve vendors list button turned on right there. Okay. So you just click that, hit save, and save again. Okay. Now for the AP manager clerk, you're going to not have that on, right? So I was working with Nick a little bit ago, and we were playing with the approval and declines. And I can't even do it. If I set the vendor up with full permissions, I still cannot approve. Okay. So if I set the vendor up and try to approve it, it doesn't let you. But to be safe, please uncheck it. Okay. All right. Any questions on that, Nick? That made sense to you, right?
Yeah, that was great.
All right. So in your My Preferences, you're going to come into here. And we are going to turn on the approved vendor approval confirmation and request for approval vendor checkbox. Okay, you can see there's many more, obviously. The vendor request for approval is when I'm going to be AP manager, Nick's going to be the controller. So good luck, Nick.
Thank you.
So the request for approval for the vendor is going to be when I try to add the vendor, I'm going to have the notifications going to go to Nick to approve it. Okay, so we'll show that in a minute. Okay, so make sure you have those on if you're the controller especially. All right. So now let's go to the vendor screen here, and we are going to show the setup of a vendor and talk through a few other fields we recommend as best practices. Okay, so we're going to come into, let's go into this B&M Marble. Okay, so a typical vendor setup screen, we've got these fields all the way down here. These are all standard fields, okay? And on the left here. Right here, these are custom fields. So I have created these 3 custom fields, and I'm going to tell you what these are about, okay? So when you are checking in general, no matter what accounting system you're using, if you're checking that a vendor is not fictitious, they're licensed, there's many things you can do to check that they're legitimate. One of them is to go out to the state websites, double check that they are registered as a contractor, right? So you could put the contractor number in here and the expiration date of their license. Usually it's a year situation, maybe 3, right? So you want to double check that they're not an expired contractor. Okay, so you can put these fields in. You can make sure that these fields are required when you set these custom fields up. Okay, so that's a custom field setup. Okay, this one here would be, let's say that someone has sent you ACH information, a vendor, and they want to be paid via ACH. You want to give them a phone call. You want to make sure you talk to a real person. You're not getting an email that says, hey, I'm vendor XYZ, please set up my bank info, or please change my bank info. I'm already one of yours vendors. That is a scam that goes around. So you want to be careful and make a physical phone call to a person that you know at that company. Okay. Then you probably want to note it in here that you talked to so-and-so on such date, right? It's a good tip there. So that when you come over here and change their information and set up this, you've actually talked to someone. Okay. So that's kind of a big deal there. All right. There's many more things you can do. If you guys can talk to your internal operations, you can talk to your auditor about things you could check for to help out. But those are some common ones that people use. Okay. Another common one is getting a W-9. Right here, you can attach the W-9 form. So that's another common vendor setup requirement, is that your AP manager has obtained the W-9. Okay. You could also do like a W-9 checkbox here that you received it and make a smart rule, or make it required that says, yes, we received the W-9. Okay. We'll talk about smart rules, a little tidbit at the end, but it helps you require fields so that the AP manager wouldn't even be able to submit this screen. Okay. Anything else, Nick, you want to maybe say on there, or questions? I think I covered most of there.
When we were talking earlier, you had another great tip that is, I think, very common sense, but worth noting, that go out to their website. Make sure they have a real website. Make sure that it looks legitimate. I think we can kind of feel that out these days if someone's website looks like a real company or not. So there are a lot of ways you can check to make sure that you are, in fact, paying a real company that really does work for your company.
Yep, that's a good one. Yep. Thanks. I forgot that one. Okay. So let's show you how this works in the system. So I'm going to go to one that I've already created called Johnson Drywall. Okay. So I hit the add button and I filled in some info for Johnson Drywall. Okay. Prior. So I've got a real name. I've got a real address. Oh, the other one is PO box, right? If they only give you a PO box, that's kind of a big red flag. Okay. Not always, but it can be. Phone number is probably a good idea as well. So you've got all this filled in, right? And you then have maybe these required or not, but whatever you require, you would want a smart rule in place for that. But once you get all your fields filled in, you're going to hit submit. And now it's going to show with the status of submitted. And Nick should be getting an email here shortly, and he can confirm this, but Nick should be getting an email shortly that says Johnson Drywall needs to be approved or looked at for approval, right? So I'm going to stop sharing. Nick's going to show you what his approved vendor screen looks like on his end.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm actually going to start at home for us here. I got an email that told me that Lisa requested vendor to be approved. So I have a hyperlink there that I can click on. It takes me straight into that screen, but I also want to show you just from the homepage how we navigate. If we go to accounts payable, I click on approved vendors. Then this is my approved vendor screen. So I can come in here, I can click in and check on Johnson Drywall, make sure that everything is there. And Lisa, do you want me to approve this one or do you want me to decline it?
Let's do a decline so you can show them the notes here. So you notice there's some fields like we talked about that aren't filled in, right? So you could decline it and put some notes in there in the comment.
And I have two options. I can do it from here. I can also do it from right here. I can hit decline. So I'm going to say, Lisa, you didn't put a W-9 then in there, and decline it. And you see it clears out from my approved vendors list.
Okay, so now I'm going to share back over. Okay, so I'm going to refresh. I also got a notification that Nick declined the vendor. So now I'm going to go back in because he declined it, right? And I have also in my email the exact verbiage of what he said when he declined in that comment. Okay, so, oh yeah, I didn't get the W-9. So I'm going to edit it. And I'm going to go over here and I would drag and drop my W-9 attachment there. Whatever else he said needed to be done, resubmit. So if I resubmit, then Nick should be getting another notification that says it's been submitted again. So you can go back and forth, which is really great because you might do that here and there. And then you can be reapproved. And hopefully he got that, but I'm sure he did because
Yeah,
I've already
it already
tested
it already came through.
All right, great.
I can hear all the dings going off.
Dings, yep,
I
great.
need to approve. Lisa, do you want
Okay.
me to show the approval, or you want me to just send it through?
You can just send it through. Yeah, you can approve it.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
And then I will refresh my screen. I'll also get another notification that says it's been approved. And I did. So I'm going to refresh. Probably heard my ding.
And I'll mention here, a lot of people get nervous about having notification exhaustion. You're not adding vendors all the time, right? This is not something that's happening every day. You're not making adjustments every day. So it is good to have these approvals on for almost everybody.
Yep. That's a very good point. We have a lot of them that come in when we demo. So yeah, that's a very good point. That is a very good point. One thing I want to say, just to kind of wrap this up is in general, when you are dealing with vendors, be careful of, even if they're already in your system, right? Be careful of urgent payment requests that come through. Be careful of vendors that underbid, they're very low. Be careful of bank info changes and phone number changes at the same time. So just be really careful with all that's going out there in the world right now with fraud. Just be really careful with with your vendors is a big tip we would say.
And construction has always been a relationship industry, and that's not any different today than it was in the past. So it's really nice to build relationships with the back office at the companies that you work with regularly, and so that you can call someone up that and you can check and make sure that the request was actually for them. So definitely continue to build those relationships with folks that you work with.
All right. Well, that's all I wanted to go through, Nick. So thanks.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll have plenty more content for you. If you know anybody who wants to work with Bangert Inc., if you're using our content to learn more and more, or if you are not yet using Sage Intacct, please use the link below and refer either yourself or your friends so that they can get everything that we offer with us and they can have an incredible experience using Sage Intacct for construction.